This is Steve Laffey's Fixing America. And now, broadcasting live from the Fixing America Command Center in Fort Collins, Colorado, here is your host, Steve Laffey.
Hey, good afternoon. Steve Laffey. Steve Laffey's Fixing America. Thanks for joining us again. It's an important two-day show. You know, yesterday we started off by playing the State of the Union address by Barack Obama, which was on Tuesday night. So on Wednesday we got through some of it, and we're going to try to finish it up today. We've skipped over a little bit in the middle, talk about immigration, and once again we see no concrete reforms. But let's pick it up, the speech, at LaffeyRadio.com. Let's pick it up at 3910 into a speech over here on C-SPAN, and we'll comment on it as we go through, just like we were yesterday.
To every mayor, governor, state legislator in America, I say, you don't have to wait for Congress to act. Americans will support you if you take this on. And as a chief executive, I intend to lead by example. Profitable corporations like Costco see higher wages as the smart way to boost productivity and reduce turnover. We should too. In the coming weeks, I will issue an executive order requiring federal contractors to pay their federally funded employees a fair wage of at least $10.10 an hour, because if you cook our troops' meals or wash their dishes, you should not have to live in poverty. Of course, to reach millions more, Congress does need to get on board. Today, the federal minimum wage is worth about 20% less than it was when Ronald Reagan first stood here. And Tom Harkin and George Miller have a bill to fix that by lifting the minimum wage to $10.10. It's easy to remember, 10.10. This will help families. It'll give businesses customers with more money to spend. It does not involve any new bureaucratic program. So join the rest of the country. Say yes. Give America a raise. Give them a raise.
Let's stop it right there. There's a couple things to go into. One, as we talked about yesterday, President Obama is issuing another executive order, which seems to be illegal. Seems to be that he shouldn't be doing it. We've gone over the Constitution on that, but he doesn't care. It's quite amazing. So for new federal contractors, they have to pay people $10.10 an hour. I bet you someone's going to do an article on this pretty soon that says almost all of them do. And by the way, he's talking about no one should have to live in poverty, and nobody really should, and some people do. But at 10 times 40 hours a week times 50 weeks a year, that's $20,400. I might be off by a little bit, I guess, but it's a little over $20,000. So a family of four is still living in poverty at $20,000 by most every state. I don't know, it might be a place where you're not. They judge it by states and cost of living and so forth. So the minimum wage, if there's one thing true in economics, is that when you raise the price of a good, you will get less demand for that good. And so he's trying to get all these mayors. By the way, it's a popular thing in America today. I guess because most people don't know economics. And they don't. We have to lead by showing people that this is really hurting, especially the poor people. It'll lead to less jobs, even among the people working. Because when some guy goes from $7.25 to $10.10, what about the guy who's already making $10.10? He's got to go here to $13. You can't have a guy working there a year, working his way up in a company, stay at $10.10 when he's got a year of experience, and they're hiring new people at $7.25, and of course it's few people like that. And then think about what companies will do. They'll try to automate more. Let's get back to the speech.
There are other steps we can take to help families make ends meet. And few are more effective at reducing inequality and helping families pull themselves up through hard work than the Earned Income Tax Credit. Right now, it helps about half of all parents at some point. Think about that. It helps about half of all parents in America at some point in their life. But I agree with Republicans like Senator Rubio that it doesn't do enough for single workers who don't have kids. So let's work together to strengthen the credit, reward work, help more Americans get ahead. Let's do more to help Americans save for retirement. Today, most workers don't have a pension. A Social Security check often isn't enough on its own. And while the stock market has doubled over the last 5 years, that doesn't help folks who don't have 401ks. That's why tomorrow I will direct the Treasury to create a new way for working Americans to start their own retirement savings. My RA. It's a new savings bond that encourages folks to build a nest egg.
Okay. By the way, my RA, he was going to call it my IRA. He obviously thought of this today or Tuesday. He thought of this a couple of days ago because it's totally out of the blue. And if you think about it, what he's going to encourage people to do, because the debt is so high and he doesn't want to talk about the debt, so much debt he's created, he's going to try to get Americans to buy government bonds. Sounds like the Japanese, what they've done. It makes no sense at all. We have 401ks and IRAs, self-directed IRAs, Roth programs. So this new one is like you just buy the government bonds of the government, whose bond rating has started to go down, who you're going to have eventually a weaker dollar in inflation when you buy these fixed interest bonds. Nobody should be buying them. It's amazing what he comes up with here. And by the way, the point that half of all parents at some point in their lives have been of the earned income credit, that's probably true. I don't know it to be true, but I'm sure it's true. At some point, people start off with low income, they go to high income, so people have bad years, they qualify for different deductions. I, over the past 20 years, qualified for certain deductions when I've made less money and qualified for less when I made more money.
My RA guarantees a decent return with no risk of losing what you put in. And if this Congress wants to help, work with me.
By the way, I just have to stop again because I've done economics my whole life. No risk of what you put in. That may be the actual principle, but the real rate of return, you're going to lose a lot. They have you buying these 20-year bonds at 3%, even though today it might look attractive because the Fed has kept our rates so low. None of this speech gets into the real hard problems in America.
Fix an upside-down tax code that gives big tax breaks to help the wealthy save, but does little or nothing for middle-class Americans. Offer every American access to an automatic IRA on the job so they can save at work just like everybody in this chamber can.
We have one. We have 401ks at work. I don't know what he's talking about. We have one. Now they're going to have a new government one, only for government bonds.
And since the most important investment many families make is their home, send me legislation that protects taxpayers from footing the bill for a housing crisis ever again and keeps the dream of home ownership alive for future generations.
Footing the bill? He and George Bush were behind the bailout of the large banks and the bailout of the large auto companies and the bailout of the union heads. Yeah, why did we have this big banking bill instead of having a real bill to say this wouldn't happen? I hate to say the word again. He's been in office for more than a full term. Why doesn't he propose the legislation through some congressman and get this done if that's what he wants?
One last point on financial security. For decades, few things exposed hardworking families to economic hardship more than a broken healthcare system. And in case you haven't heard, we're in the process of fixing that. A pre-existing condition used to mean that someone like Amanda Shelley, a physician's assistant and single mom from Arizona, couldn't get health insurance. But on January 1st, she got covered. On January 3rd, she felt a sharp pain. On January 6th, she had emergency surgery. Just 1 week earlier, Amanda said, and that surgery would have meant bankruptcy. That's what health insurance reform is all about. the peace of mind that if misfortune strikes, you don't have to lose everything. Already, because of the Affordable Care Act, more than 3 million Americans under age 26 have gained coverage under their parents' plan. More than 9 million Americans have signed up for private health insurance or Medicaid coverage. 9 million. And here's another number, 0. Because of this law, no American, none, 0, can ever again be dropped or denied coverage for a pre-existing condition like asthma or back pain or cancer. No woman can ever be charged more just because she's a woman. And we did all this while adding years to Medicare's finances, keeping Medicare premiums flat, and lowering prescription costs for millions of seniors. Now,
I got to stop it there. Okay, let's go over the two things that come up that people do agree upon, and Americans would have liked to have seen and would have passed by both houses, I think. One, due to bad luck or bad genes, which is what he talks about here with Amanda Shelley. We don't want people who have bad luck. I mean, they go out and do everything right. They're in a car that smashes into them. We don't want them to not be eligible for health insurance that they have. And bad genes. We don't want people who are more predestined, let's say, to have cancer, to be taken off by health insurance. We got to make sure that they can't. And the third thing he doesn't bring up, we want to be transparent. And the fourth thing, transparent in what the costs are. We want that. We've done a whole show on that. And the fourth thing is we want to be transportable. We want to be able to take our health insurance across state lines. One of the reasons we're not having an economic recovery again is that we're not able to do that. What we didn't want with the fines and the federal government control in this website for $700 and some odd million, it still doesn't work. He's talking about the people who have signed up, but they haven't enrolled. It's absolutely what he could have done with this could have been positive for America. We could have had the private marketplace still working with a couple of caveats on it, and we could have put caps on how much we would have spent for a plan, and everybody could have been in if they wanted to be in. But fining people and forcing them to buy health insurance, even though Judge Roberts thinks it's okay, is not.
I do not expect to convince my Republican friends on the merits of this law. But I know that the American people are not interested in refighting old battles. So, again, if you have specific plans to cut costs, cover more people, increase choice, tell America what you do differently. Let's see if the numbers add up. But let's not have another 40-something votes to repeal a law that's already helping millions of Americans like Amanda.
Well, first of all, the law is not helping millions of people at all right now. It's hurting businesses, especially small businesses. And the president has put like special exemptions in for his friends and the members of Congress, so they're not part of Obamacare. But for many people, their rates have gone up, and for many people, they're scared to get on that website because I'd be scared. All their personal information gets to be at risk. Steve Laffey's Fixing America. We're doing the State of the Union address. We're going to finish it up today no matter what. We're at LaffeyRadio.com. We're on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter, Laffey Radio. We'll take a quick break here and come back and try to get more President Obama's State of the Union speech.
Stay tuned. Steve Laffey's Fixing America returns after these commercial messages.
Picture this, your next trip, Utah, 5 national parks. First, Zion. You're walking, the ground rises, the ground drops, the ground becomes water. Next, Bryce. You're riding a mule. You're riding a mule under giant orange drip castles. You are not dreaming. You will not forget this. On to Capitol Reef. Take the scenic route, the really scenic route. Take a path you've never taken and see the stars for the first time. Now for Canyonlands. You're riding a bike. You're riding a bike on Mars. Now you're riding the rapids. Class 2, Class 3, Class 4, Classic. Arches, 5:32 a.m. Some things are worth racing the sunrise for. The horizon lightens. You round the corner. Whoa. This is Life Elevated. The Mighty Five. 5 iconic parks, 1 epic experience. Plan your trip at visitutah.com.
I'm always up for a challenge. It's the feeling of accomplishment that drives me. And there's no better challenge than serving part-time in the Coast Guard Reserve. I protect my country, work with the best and brightest, I get great pay and benefits in return. The Coast Guard Reserve is important work. I get to serve my community, and it's always rewarding.
If you were born ready, there's a new challenge waiting for you. Learn about serving part-time at gocoastguard.com/reserve.
This is Nnamdi Asamoah. I play football for the Philadelphia Eagles, but what I do off the field with United Way might be more important. I'm a volunteer tutor and mentor. Why? Because over 1 million kids a year drop out of school, and that's not okay. It takes 12 years to create a graduate, but it takes about the same time to create a dropout. And the difference between a child becoming one or the other could be me, or it could be you. Studies show that if we get to these kids earlier, their chances are better. And kids who read well by 3rd grade are more likely to graduate. So join me in United Way. Suit up and take the pledge. Become a volunteer reader, tutor, or mentor. Because when a child succeeds, we all succeed. Give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Take the pledge at unitedway.org. Brought to you by United Way, the Ad Council, and the National Football League.
And now, back to the Fixing America radio program with your host, Steve Laffey.
Good evening. I'm RNC Chairman Reince Priebus. Tonight, we heard the same old promises from President Obama. Promises for a better economy, promises for better health care, promises for a better government. But after 5 years of promises, what do we have to show for it? There are more Americans living in poverty than ever before. People are giving up on looking for work. Incomes have fallen. And under Obamacare, health care has actually gotten far more expensive. 5 million Americans have received notices that their insurance is canceled. Now, that's not fair. It's not fair that Americans lost insurance they liked because the president lied to them. Now, not only are people losing their insurance, they're losing their doctors, too.
Steve Laffey here. Steve Laffey's Fixing America. Thanks for tuning back in. That was the chairman of the Republican National Committee, Mr. Priebus, commenting. I guess everybody has a comment. And what we're doing is taking the whole speech and playing the whole thing, about all of it we can, in a 2-hour period here at LaffeyRadio.com. And by the way, you don't have to listen to this thing live before I get going. We have a self-loading app. Just put it on your phone, listen to it in your car at night, pass this around to your friends. We have a brand new Fixing America Presents out about marijuana that came out yesterday. And we got lots of stuff on this website, LaffeyRadio.com. So we're going to keep playing some of the speech. I may let him talk a little bit more this time because we want to get to more of it. There's a little lull here. It's sort of some stuff up in the next part. So let's listen to President Obama for the next couple of minutes.
The first 40 were plenty. We all owe it to the American people to say what we're for, not just what we're against. And if you want to know the real impact this law is having, just talk to Governor Steve Beshear of Kentucky, who's here tonight. Now, Kentucky is not the most liberal part of the country. That's not where I got my highest vote totals. But he's like a man possessed when it comes to covering his Commonwealth's families. To our neighbors and our friends, he said. To people we shop and go to church with. Farmers out on the tractor. Grocery clerks. There are people who go to work every morning praying they don't get sick. No one deserves to live that way. Steve's right. That's why tonight I ask every American who knows someone without health insurance to help them get covered by March 31st. Help them get covered. Moms, get on your kids to sign up. Kids, call your mom and walk her through the application. They'll give her some peace of mind, and plus she'll appreciate hearing from you. After all, that's the spirit that has always moved this nation forward. It's the spirit of citizenship. The recognition that through hard work and responsibility, we can pursue our individual dreams but still come together as one American family to make sure the next generation can pursue its dreams as well. Citizenship means standing up for everyone's right to vote. Last year, part of the Voting Rights Act was weakened, but conservative Republicans and liberal Democrats are working together to strengthen it. And the bipartisan commission I appointed, chaired by my campaign lawyer and Governor Romney's campaign lawyer, came together and have offered reforms so that no one has to wait more than a half hour to vote. Let's support these efforts. It should be the power of our vote, not the size of our bank accounts, that drives our democracy.
And here we stop. What are the concrete proposals? If people have to wait a half hour to vote, that's not really denying them their rights. I've waited a half hour to vote. No one wants to wait 3 hours, and that comes down to the local governments getting things together. But this part, to get everybody covered by March 31st, and I guess that's fine, there's still no concrete proposals. There is one thing that he talks about. There are people who go to work every morning praying they don't get sick, and no one deserves to live that way. That's true. And that's why we needed a basic plan for everybody that they could be in, not that they have to be in. America is not a country of coercion. And we've got to have the free market work, because what we've seen when the government, even with the website, what would it have taken for the president just to say, listen, you guys are right. Like, even the website, we sent it out to some contractors, and they blew it. The government can't run anything. We let them run the national defense because we need it, but they effectively can't run anything well. Not the Department of Energy, not the Department of Education. By the way, there's nothing in here about, when they talk about our children, what about the national debt? Where's the part of the speech about the national debt other than he's cut it in half? Half of what it was before when he was the president. Let's keep going. Where is it? Where is the talk about balancing the budget? It's gone. It's not in the speech. What about the $211 trillion on the backs of our children? How would our children have the next generation pursue its dreams when they handle all this debt? They can't. We know it. Everybody knows it. It's not in the speech.
Citizenship means standing up for the lives that gun violence steals from us each day. I've seen the courage of parents, students, pastors, police officers all over this country who say, we are not afraid. And I intend to keep trying, with or without Congress, to help stop more tragedies from visiting innocent Americans in our movie theaters and our shopping malls or schools like Sandy Hook.
For maybe the 5th time, the 7th time, with or without Congress, he's just going to take executive action on things they disagree with, which we've been through yesterday about how many times he's done this and how illegal it really is.
Citizenship demands a sense of common purpose. participation in the hard work of self-government, an obligation to serve our communities. And I know this chamber agrees that few Americans give more to their country than our diplomats and the men and women of the United States Armed Forces. Thank you. Tonight, because of the extraordinary troops and civilians who risk and lay down their lives to keep us free, the United States is more secure. When I took office nearly
I don't mean to stop in the middle. Do we all feel more secure? Has anybody taken a look at the map of the Middle East in Western Africa? Take a look at one in 2008 and take a look at one today. Start up there with Libya. Anarchy, Benghazi, it's in Libya. Move over to Egypt. Mubarak was in power. Then Morsi came in after President Obama gave a speech. Then go on down to Sudan in total revolt. Move over to, name the country, Syria. Just look at them, all of them. Look what's happened in Iraq. Iran effectively came in and told them to get the Americans out of Iraq, and Fallujah's now going to the terrorists. Look at Turkey. Turkey just in the last 24 hours. Do you feel more secure? Do you feel more secure over what's going on with China and Japan? Do you feel more secure? Do you think this is the right policy? But he comes out and says we all feel more secure. I don't.
180,000 Americans were serving in Iraq and Afghanistan. Today, all our troops are out of Iraq. More than 60,000 of our troops have already come home from Afghanistan. With Afghan forces now in the lead for their own security, our troops have moved to a support role. Together with our allies, we will complete our mission there by the end of this year, and America's longest war will finally be over. After 2014, we will support a unified Afghanistan as it takes responsibility for its own future. If the Afghan government signs a security agreement that we have negotiated, a small force of Americans could remain in Afghanistan with NATO allies to carry out two narrow missions: training and assisting Afghan forces, and counterterrorism operations to pursue any remnants of al-Qaeda. For while our relationship with Afghanistan will change, one thing will not: our resolve that terrorists do not launch attacks against our country. The fact is, that danger remains. While we've put al-Qaeda's core leadership on a path to defeat, the threat has evolved as al-Qaeda affiliates and other extremists take root in different parts of the world.
We've got to wonder who watched that, who wrote that, because it's craftily worded. Al-Qaeda's core leadership is on a path to defeat, whoever they might be. The threat has evolved as their affiliates, which don't count, I guess. And they've taken root in different parts, but we're more secure because somehow a speechwriter, and I don't think anybody's analyzed it this way, is craftily put the core over here, and they've been taken care of, which I guess was Obama, bin Laden, and over here everybody else is expanding, but that's not the total threat, but it is. We'll take a quick break here. LaffeyRadio.com. Steve Laffey's Fixing America. We've been talking and commenting on basically almost the full transcript and video of President Barack Obama's State of the Union speech a couple of nights ago.
Stay tuned. Steve Laffey's Fixing America returns after these commercial messages.
I am an American soldier.
I'm a warrior and a member of a team.
I serve the people of the United States and live the Army values.
I will always place this first.
I will never accept defeat.
I will never accept defeat.
I will never quit.
I will never leave a fallen comrade.
I am disciplined.
I am disciplined.
Physically and mentally tough.
Trained and proficient in my warrior tasks and drills.
I always maintain my arms, my equipment, and myself.
I am an expert and I am a professional.
I stand ready to deploy, engage, and destroy the
enemies of the United States of America in close combat.
I am a guardian of freedom and the American way of life.
I am an American soldier.
I am an American soldier.
I am an American soldier.
There's strong, and there's Army Strong. See what it takes at GoArmy.com.
Well, I finally did it. I opened a 401k.
What? Why? Just wait for the inheritance. We've definitely got a rich uncle somewhere. We're one call away from the winner's circle at the Derby, dinners with multiple forks, a vacation home in the country, using summer as a verb.
You don't actually think that, do you?
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs, the Rhode Island Society of CPAs, and the Ad Council.
When I have an asthma attack, I feel scared. It's like tiny nails in the air poke my lungs. I start to cough. Sometimes my parents have to take me to the hospital.
Today, 1 out of 13 children suffer from some form of asthma, accounting for nearly 1/3 of all emergency room visits.
I feel like I'm choking. It's kind of like an elephant is on my chest. A little whistle sound comes out when I breathe.
But while your child may suffer from asthma doesn't have to make your child suffer. There are simple ways you can prevent your child's next attack. To learn more, log on to www.noattacks.org or call your doctor, because even one attack is one too many.
I feel like a fish with no water.
Brought to you by the EPA, the Ad Council, and this station.
And now, back to the Fixing America radio program with your host, Steve Laffey.
What an honor it is for me to be with you after the President's State of the Union. Tonight, we honor America, a nation that has witnessed the greatest rise of freedom and opportunity our world has ever seen. A nation where we are not defined by our limits, but by our potential. And a nation where a girl who worked at the McDonald's drive-thru to help pay for college can be with you from the United States Capitol. But the most important moments right now aren't happening here. They're not in the Oval Office or in the House chamber. They're in your homes, kissing your kids goodnight, figuring out how to pay the bills, getting ready for tomorrow's doctor's visit.
Well, I guess I better practice my flowery language. Steve Laffey here. Steve Laffey's Fixing America at LaffeyRadio.com, on Facebook at Laffey Radio, Twitter, Laffey Radio. Follow us there. We're putting out a lot of product, solving a lot of problems. Today, it's not so much about solving the problem, it's listening to the State of the Union address and commenting on it. We're nearly through, and it's been amazing. President Obama has not given too many concrete examples of anything he'd like to do. He's also couched it in flowery language, and we really don't know what to make of it as we get through the speech. Let's play a little bit more. We'll comment on it to this next segment. But some part of me just says to myself, he's trying to fool the people in that he's only been president for a couple of months. We'll get more on that later. Let's play some more of the clips right here.
In Yemen, Somalia, Iraq, Mali, we have to keep working with partners to disrupt and disable those networks. In Syria, we'll support the opposition that rejects the agenda of terrorist networks.
Excuse me just 1 second. Who is that? There must be somebody, but there's nobody that I know from the newspapers. Does he know the group of people that rejects and wants freedom? Which group of people is that? In Syria will support the opposition that rejects the agenda of terrorist networks. There's nobody left in Syria. There's no one to support. Don't get me. We can go on about his foreign policy or lack thereof, and we will, because he's in a foreign policy talk right now. But the first thing he should have talked about was communist China and the rise of communist China and how we're not banding together with Japan and India and South Korea to buttress that before it's too late.
Home, we'll keep strengthening our defenses and combat new threats like cyber attacks. And as we reform our defense budget, we will have to keep faith with our men and women in uniform and invest in the capabilities they need to succeed in future missions. We have to remain vigilant. But I strongly believe our leadership and our security cannot depend on our outstanding military alone. As Commander-in-Chief, I have used force when needed to protect the American people. And I will never hesitate to do so as long as I hold this office. But I will not send our troops into harm's way unless it is truly necessary, nor will I allow our sons and daughters to be mired in open-ended conflicts. We must fight the battles that need to be fought, not those that terrorists prefer from us, large-scale deployments that drain our strength and may ultimately feed extremism.
And to give him credit, this is a good point. We don't want to be mired in open-ended wars, open-ended conflicts. And we have been. And it must remind all Americans that since the Battle of Inchon, we as Americans have not been willing, either by the population or the presidents, to wage war when we had to for total and complete victory. Since MacArthur said, "I don't know how to bomb half a bridge," that has been our basic problem. From Vietnam through the Iraqi war, through the first Iraqi war. That's been our problem. It's a very good point. Not that he's not going to do anything about it. He's not going to get prepared for it. But it's a very good point to be made.
So even as we actively and aggressively pursue terrorist networks through more targeted efforts and by building the capacity of our foreign partners, America must move off a permanent war footing. That's why I've imposed prudent limits on the use of drones.
Permanent war footing, use of drones. One's like a non sequitur, I think. You can have the use of drones in foreign countries and not be on permanent war footing. Let's go back.
For we will not be safer if people abroad believe we strike within their countries without regard for the consequence. That's why, working with this Congress, I will reform our surveillance programs, because the vital work of our intelligence community depends on public confidence, here and abroad, that privacy of ordinary people is not being violated. And with the Afghan war ending, this needs to be the year Congress lifts the remaining restrictions on detainee transfers and we close the prison at Guantanamo Bay. Because
5 years into his presidency, that was what he ran on. If he wanted to close, why is it not closed? It's not going to get closed. It's vitally important that we have that prison there. What happens at the prison can be a subject we can discuss. It's not going to get closed. Remember, this is the administration that was trying to take people into New York and try them right next to the common criminal. These are people who tried to destroy our country. Going to try them next to forgers, I guess. It didn't work, by the way. Didn't work. That's an old story. He's bringing it up as if he's never thought of it again.
As we counter terrorism, not just through intelligence and military actions, but by remaining true to our constitutional ideals and setting an example for the rest of the world. You see, in a world of complex threats, our security, our leadership depends on all elements of our power, including strong and principled diplomacy. American diplomacy has rallied more than 50 countries to prevent nuclear materials from falling into the wrong hands and allowed us to reduce our own reliance on Cold War stockpiles. American diplomacy, backed by the threat of force, is why Syria's chemical weapons are being eliminated. And we will continue to work with the international community to usher in the future the Syrian people deserve. A future free of dictatorship, terror, and fear.
One of the Syrian people, do we remember that he talked about the red line about chemical weapons, then was going to go in, and then didn't go in, and then let the president of Russia, Putin, take control? Putin used that to be now up on a stage as the guy you can deal with among world countries. Not so different from the way that the leader of China is doing. We don't have any foreign policy. Foreign policy is defined by how our government, in a consistent way, will deal with other countries. We've already had Vice President Biden, and I guess the president, do away with the Monroe Doctrine. That was a piece of foreign policy from the 1820s until a couple of weeks ago. The world is getting to be on fire because of the lack of foreign policy we have. And Syria is just the latest, or one of the latest examples. Ukraine is another one.
As we speak, American diplomacy is supporting Israelis and Palestinians as they engage in the difficult but necessary talks to end the conflict there, to achieve dignity and an independent state for Palestinians, and lasting peace and security for the state of Israel, a Jewish state that knows America will always be at their side.
But he hasn't been at their side. When Benjamin Netanyahu came to visit America, he made him sit in the back of the White House. Wouldn't really bring him out in public. He went to Egypt to give the speech in Cairo in 2009. He didn't go to Israel for years. These people, the Palestinians, we've done shows on this. They don't want a state. They're going to do their... He must not understand this. It's a lack of understanding of how these people think in the Middle East. They want to destroy Israel.
And it is American diplomacy, backed by pressure, that has halted the progress of Iran's nuclear program and rolled back parts of that program for the very first time in a decade. As we gather here tonight, Iran has begun to eliminate its stockpile of higher levels of enriched uranium.
I got to stop. That's a lie. They're not eliminating it. They may be changing the configuration of it. They may be putting some of the uranium into another compound and freezing it or whatever they're going to do, but they are simply not eliminating it. There's no elimination. Why is he saying that? We are acting now with weakness toward Iran. They've killed our American soldiers. They are world terrorists. They're behind what's happening in Iraq today, and Syria, and Lebanon with their terrorist organizations. Why would he say something like this? It's not true. There's parts of the speech we have to stop and say it's simply not true. We got to take our last break here. Steve Laffey's Fixing America at LaffeyRadio.com. We're going over the State of the Union address, and I about had enough. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Steve Laffey's Fixing America returns after these commercial messages.
I'm in almost every school bus and classroom. I go to school with your children. We say the Pledge of Allegiance together. You see me around the neighborhood and you tell me that I'm a pretty good kid. Well, I'm one out of every 5 children in America, and I'm struggling with hunger. This problem is closer than you think. My teacher tells me we can grow up to be whatever we want. I want to grow up to be someone who doesn't go to bed hungry. There's enough food in this country to feed everybody. Please visit feedingamerica.org today and find your local food bank for ways to help. Every dollar you donate helps provide 8 meals for kids like me, quietly struggling with hunger. Together, we are Feeding America, brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Students, when I call the reason for your absences throughout the years, please exit the auditorium without your high school diploma. Too tired, family trip, sick day, starting the holidays early.
Starting in the 6th grade, students who miss 18 days or more of school in a year for any reason will fall behind and risk not graduating high school. How many days of school has your child missed this year? Absences add up. Keep track at boostattendance.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Army and the Ad Council.
The call to serve. It has no sound, yet I have heard it in the whispered retelling of honorable sacrifices made by those who have served before me. The call to serve has no form, yet I have clearly seen it. In the eyes of men and women infinitely more courageous and more driven than most. The call to serve has no weight, yet I have held it in my hands. I will commit to carry it close to my heart until my country is safe and the anguish of those less fortunate has been soothed. The call to serve is at once invisible and always present. And for those who choose to answer the call, for their country, for their fellow man, for themselves, it is the most powerful force on earth. America's Navy, a global force for good.
And now, back to the Fixing America radio program with your host, Steve Laffey.
Good evening. I'm Senator Mike Lee from Utah. In the few minutes I have tonight, I'd like to speak especially to those Americans who may feel they've been forgotten by both political parties. Those individuals and families who work hard, play by the rules, balance their budgets, honor the golden rule, and don't understand why their government in Washington can't do the same. You're probably as frustrated as I am about an ever-growing government that somehow thinks it's okay to lie to, spy on, and even target its own citizens. Many hard-working Americans are discouraged and wondering what, if anything, can be done. I believe we need to do what Americans have always done, come together and press for positive change.
I hope Senator Lee had more than that. Anyway, out of Utah, that's Senator Lee. I guess he had another response. Listen, I can go. The speech goes on the same as a very, very great ending of this when they talk about a sergeant who's about gave his life but still alive for our country and bring you to tears. It's really a video. You should watch the end of it because he's just a great American. It's nice that they brought him up. But it's time to start talking to America about what we need to do. What really is, what would have been a State of the Union address? Will someone please level with the country? People of America, the State of the Union is in disarray. It is divided. And we have large problems. And unless we all put in ourselves some money, we won't get it solved. The people we've elected on both sides of the aisle, the people who passed that lousy budget in December 17th, that put it off for 2 more years and are going to overspend by $700 billion a year, those people can't be in an office anymore. We've got a giant problem, and it's the problem that Dylan Ratigan talks about in the movie that we made, Fixing America. It's the people of the world versus corrupt government. And that's happening in America now, too. We have concentrated power at the IRS, at the Federal Reserve, in our banking system. Without term limits, we have concentrated power of these people who are gerrymandered districts and keep getting reelected. So we have too much concentrated power, and we put the whole shooting match of our country at risk. This giant debt that never gets fixed. It's over $17 trillion. But that's not even the real debt, folks. The real debt is somewhere between $60 trillion and $220 trillion, whether you take one person's estimates or what I truly believe. Larry Kotlikoff, my friend at the Boston University and the senior economic professor. And so we've got to start one by one solving these problems. And we have a foreign policy or lack thereof. We don't understand that there are really several countries around us that are ganging up together against America while we're not paying attention. Communist China, Russia under Putin, North Korea, Venezuela, Iran, Syria, 6 countries. And there's some more, but those are the ones that are not with us, and they won't be with us. So let's take it piece by piece. 1, when it comes to concentrated power in these different institutions, we've got to stop it so that we can have more freedom. The choice is always and everywhere, freedom versus tyranny. In America, we can't imagine tyranny. You can't imagine it because you've lived in freedom. But our freedom is being constricted. Let's take the Federal Reserve. I would propose that the Federal Reserve, while it's still in business, only takes care of the money supply and inflation. And it turns to the Congress, the House of Representatives, and the Senate, and says, you do your part. We will make sure that inflation stays 0. It might be 1, it might be -1, but that's what we're going to concentrate on. We will no longer be in charge of unemployment because that's not what we can do. It hasn't worked out well. We've kept rates too low. We've had economic disasters because of it, and we're going to have another one because of it. So we're going to change the rules of the Fed. That's one thing. The IRS, too much concentrated power. I would propose that we have a new system. There are many good workers at the IRS, but that we've seen what they've been doing, not just to the latest conservatives, what Nixon wanted to do to liberals. So let's get out of that system and let's raise a lot more money. Let's go to a fair tax or some form of a fair tax where we don't have to have the IRS. Let's do that so we can tax people when they consume. Why? We want them to save. So people who are saving they don't get taxed on their savings. Let's have them taxed on consumption. We will capture lots of the underground economy, and people will say, well, it's not good to be in the underground economy. Let's go back to the real economy. We'll raise revenue a lot because anybody who tells you that we don't have to raise revenue is lying. The deficits are too big. We've got to run large surpluses. And we've got to start doing it now. As for the $211 trillion, we can't solve all that today. But we can take one specific problem and solve it this month or this quarter. Take Social Security. Americans, listen. It's been a total abject lie from 1983 when Greenspan told you fixed it to today. It is 27% underfunded. And so at some point in the future, they will just cut the checks or we'll come up with taxing everybody more. But that's not the right way. So we can change it. We can do things that are specific. We can tell people, listen, we're going to put a 0 after all the contributions you've made today. And so you're going to get what it says you got now. So you're 45, you're going to get X when you turn 65 or 70, whatever we make it. And it probably has to be raised also. But that's what you're going to get. And so the people who are older pay less of the penalty. People who are younger pay more. And we've got to get you a different system. One where assets match liabilities. So we'll put people, you'll put into a system, but it's your system. You own it. And if you keel over tomorrow, you can keep it. But when you get to be 60 and you're putting into 8%, let's say it's 8% of your income. And by the way, we have a program today where not everybody's in it. Everybody has to be in it. We're not going to do away with Social Security. So now we've taken care of the people who are already in it, and say someone who's 45, they're into a new system too. So they're going to get 2 checks. They get to be 60, we stop buying annuities. We invest the money and give people a real economic return of zero, but we give them their money back, and now assets and liabilities start to match. When they get to be 60, we stop buying annuities until they're 70. If you keel over then, you lose out, because now you're in the pool of all the other 60-year-olds. But now it's an annuity, and it goes on forever. You don't have to worry about running out, and the U.S. government doesn't have to worry about funding it. And we can take $30 or $40 trillion off the backs of our children. You know it, and I knew it. I talked about this when I was the mayor of Cranston, Rhode Island. And the older people there, when they finally figured out they had to pay more, we had to cut some services to fix it, they were all in. And that's where the politicians from the past years and today will not tell you the truth. You've heard the clips of the flowery language that America is great. America is great, but that's not the message we need to deliver. The message is we're all in. Somehow we are all in. And you're going to pay a little bit more. And the younger people are going to have to get a different system. And you can run the ads tomorrow about Laffey doesn't want people to get Social Security like they did to everybody else. It's not the truth. But we've all got to suck it up. Healthcare. This system that we have today isn't working, won't work, never was designed to work. It was designed to eventually put you all into a single payer plan that's run by the federal government. And that won't work. It never works. We've got to find a way out of that morass under the principles that we can agree upon. Whether you get hurt in an accident or whether you have bad genes or you want to move to another state, you can't be thrown out of your insurance program. But the private sector has to operate, and the private sector better operate to make people better and make their costs transparent. And costs will then start to go down. And you people and me and my family, we've got to take better care of ourselves. We cannot have a system where a 450-pound man is simply refusing year after year to lose weight, to take care of himself. I know no one wants to hear this, and no politician will say this. And it's not that we're against people who are obese, but obesity is a giant problem in our country. But we're not going to do away with obesity by Michael Bloomberg telling you can only buy one 16-ounce drink because you're going to go buy two. But if your health insurance costs are rising, because we've tried everything we can for a couple of years to get you to go to the doctor, eat the right foods, use preventive medicine, and you simply refuse to do so, then you're not going to be eligible for the basic plan to get that transplant or to get that to get something done about your heart or a major operation that's due to the fact that you won't change. We can agree upon that then we're all in. But if you come down with cancer or your family has a higher risk of breast cancer, you're not going to be penalized. Bad luck, bad genes, we're going to protect against that. And we're not going to let you get kicked out. And if we find a guy on the side of the road who's not in any health insurance plan, we're going to pick him up. We're not doing the Ron Paul thing. We leave him by the side of the road. We're going to pick him up. We're going to there's going to be a randomization machine. Okay, Blue Cross gets this guy. He's an $80,000 a year guy. Now we got to get him down to $60,000 and $20,000 and $10,000 and $5,000. But that means it's all being together with a simple plan that we say if the economy grows more, we can add more to the simple plan. So there's two things that we can do. Why won't anybody talk about it? We've got to take on foreign policy. Communist China is building up the way Japan did in the 1930s. Wake up, America. I made a movie about this. We're probably going to release another one. I've spoken about it. Nobody seems to want to talk about it, but you, the American people, know it's true. We've got to get together with Japan, and we've got to buttress it, and that means our trade relationship with China, Communist China, will change drastically. We have several choices. We can just put tariffs on their goods that'll hurt their economy, and maybe people will rise up. But we don't.
You've been listening to Steve Laffey's Fixing America radio program on the Laffey Radio Network. Fixing America is broadcast Monday through Friday afternoons at 3 p.m. right here at www.laffeyradio.com. Any rebroadcast, retransmission, or account of this broadcast without the express written consent of Laffey Network, LLC is prohibited.